Hello, Misfits. This is Kate.
And this is Kevin.
Welcome to Horrorwood.
Hey, hey, hey.
Hey.
Top of the episode.
Top of the episode, and we have
a new Patronian. Heather Church.
Hi, Heather.
Take us to church, Heather.
Wow. Thank you so much for signing up on our Patreon. It means a lot to us. And I know we say it every time, but we truly do appreciate your support. So
We're obsessed
thank
with
you.
We love you. Do we have another business, Kate?
I guess the only other thing happening is I recorded a little intro for this in front of the Bessie Pool episode, but the LA fires.
The LA fires, yes.
Which I don't really know if I want to speak on that right now.
That's okay. You don't have to.
But yeah, it's a lot, and I don't really know what that city is going to look like in the next few weeks, months,
years.
whatever
Yeah,
it might take.
Well, if you're listening out there, we're thinking of you. We hope you're okay. We love you.
Yeah, we have a lot of listeners in California.
Yeah.
It's our biggest demographic area for listenership. And I mean, it makes sense given what we talk about. And yeah, it's just hard to see what's going on. And we just know that we are thinking of everybody out there right now and what the future might hold. And, yeah, so I think that's all we'll say on that right now.
That for sure.
You've got some things to say today.
I have a lot of things to say.
Well, let's hear them.
And this was this was your suggestion, Kate. I'm going to give you credit for this.
I mean, here's the thing. I literally just Googled.
No, I love it because I was in a weird panic earlier this week and work got crazy and I was freaking out about some stuff, which I feel better about now.
Okay, good.
You know what whatever.
And Kevin was like, just tell me what to do an episode on.
I kind of was.
And I was like, fine, bitch. And I Googled haunted theaters in West Virginia because if I know someone who loves to talk about West Virginia, it's Kevin.
You know, and it's funny, like, it's like it comes up all the time now. It's like I'm re-embracing this cultural identity. I don't know.
Hey.
Let's get some pepperoni rolls and moon pies.
Is that a West Virginia thing?
Yes.
What exactly is a pepperoni roll?
It's pepperoni in a roll.
Aptly named.
The pepperoni rolls we got for school lunch were next level.
Really?
Next level. Heart attack level.
Yikes.
For an 8-year-old. We're talking like a roll about this big.
So it's like the size of a hamburger.
Basically. And the roll part is real thin.
Real thin?
Real thin. Real tiny. Like.
Okay.
And then inside, a stack of pepperoni.
Wow. America's school system. Everyone.
You guys, I don't know if it was just the West Virginia school system. It might have been. Or if you lived in another state, did you have giant pepperoni rolls and mac and cheese every Tuesday?
We had Pizza Tuesdays. It was the rectangular cheese pizzas.
Yes, I do remember those. And they filled up the square on your tray.
Yeah, perfectly.
Perfectly.
Well, anyway.
This concludes Down the Winding Road with Kevin and Kate.
It's like delicious dish.
There we go. Well, today we are talking about a haunted theater in West Virginia.
Like I Googled.
Like you just Googled, but I went into detail on, and it is called the Keith-Albee Theatre in Huntington, West Virginia.
All right. I love a haunted theater.
Have you been to Huntington? Have you? Because Huntington is like on the border of Ohio, Kentucky, and West Virginia.
I have not been to Huntington that I am aware of.
Okay. And it's also where Marshall University is, which is like one of the big colleges, universities in West Virginia. You have WVU and then you have Marshall, which is like...
Is it like We Are Marshall?
Yeah, I'll talk about We Are Marshall.
Okay.
Because the movie had its premiere at
The Keith-Albee Theatre?
Mm-hmm.
Well, look at that.
Hot damn.
Here we go.
Imagine it. It's Monday, May 7th, 1928, and the doors of the stunning Keith-Albee Theatre in Huntington, West Virginia swung open to the public for the very first time.
Hey.
The first show was a vaudeville performance.
Ooh.
Big vaudeville things featuring the famous Ray Samuels.
Okay.
Does that name strike a bell?
Not at all.
Strike a bell, ring a bell, whichever. She was nicknamed the Blue Streak of Vaudeville.
Oh, and see, I thought it was a male as well. So here we go.
She was headlining the opening night performance. Samuels was a hugely popular performer in the early 19th century, and as everyone we seem to be talking about lately on this podcast was a Ziegfeld Follies girl.
I love a Ziegfeld Follies girl. I swear I did not know that there was a Ziegfeld
that
connection.
was like one of the first things I read, and I was like, Kate's been on the Follies girls. She's obsessed.
I had no idea, but I bet my algorithm did, and it said, girl, I know what you want to talk about.
Your algorithm is inserting Follies girls that no one's even heard of.
Which is why we need to know about them.
Right. I think we should do a continued series on these girls. They're fabulous.
I feel like I already am.
You are? You're
not
like,
intentionally.
on your laptop, you minimize like another story that you're working on.
I'm like, don't look at my screen.
So yeah, holy shit. Wasn't everyone a Ziegfeld Follies girl?
Weren't they?
Yeah. So Ray took to the stage under a fake sky filled with twinkling stars and drifting clouds.
Ooh.
This is very indicative of the Spanish Baroque style,
Okay.
which is meant to represent portrayals of the Virgin Mary under the night sky and the ascent to heaven.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, me neither. Because there are theaters here in Chicago, like Aragon Ballroom.
I've seen theaters
Music
like
Box
that.
have the stars in the clouds,
Yeah.
but that's what it's meant to evoke.
Interesting.
In that style of architecture. We'll also get into a little bit about, there's another type specifically for the outdoorsy feeling
Okay.
of being inside a theater. I'll get into that in a bit. The feature film on that night, so you got Ray, she's up there singing.
Yeah, she's doing her thing.
You have about 4 more vaudeville acts, and then they're showing the movie Good Morning Judge, starring Reginald Denny, who would later go on to be in Hitchcock's Rebecca.
Oh, okay.
So local columnists at the time in Huntington, Geneva Kent, described Ray's performance as electric, noting her voice was perfect for jazz and blues and that she captured the crowd's attention from the moment she strutted on stage.
She was a star.
She was a star. She's on top. Somebody bring her some ham.
What?
That's a joke from 30 Rock.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. I don't know why I said that.
I thought it was brilliant.
Anywho, that night the theater had 19 ushers in red uniforms guiding their guests to the seats. There's a full orchestra led by Joseph E. Kroberger, which was providing the music, and H.B. Brown played the Wurlitzer organ. The Keith-Albee Theatre itself was part of a group of theaters built and owned by the Hyman brothers, Abe A.B. and Saul Hyman.
Okay.
Feels weird saying that. Who were the majority owners of the Greater Huntington Theater Corporation.
Got it.
This new venue was highly anticipated, and after it was completed, it was hailed as a temple of amusement.
Ooh, a temple of amusement.
It is gorgina. It is gorgeous.
I'm going to look it up right this
Do it.
very second.
Nearly 100 years later, the theater still stands and is a beloved landmark.
Nice.
So the Hyman brothers, Abe and his brother, were kind of the first big theater entrepreneurs in this area at the time.
Okay, pause. I'm just looking at the inside, just on their website.
Right?
Wowza.
It's awesome.
She purty.
She's great. So, yeah, Abe and Saul were the brothers, for Huntington's first big theater entrepreneurs. They were originally from Baltimore, but they had moved with their family to Pocahontas, Virginia, where their father worked as a merchant. And after their father passed away, Abe, who was still pretty young at the time, became the head of the family, which had 9 members. A big family.
Whoa. So Abe was the oldest of the siblings?
Yes, he was. And he kind of jumped in after the dad passed to take over the family. And according to Derek Hyman, Abe's grandson, the family sold property to a local coal company in Virginia and then headed west, eventually settling in Huntington in the early 1900s.
Okay.
So in 1907, Abe and Sol started a tavern business.
Oh.
And by 1909, they owned the Palace Saloon at 328 9th Street.
Did it have those saloon doors?
I don't know, but I bet it did.
Swing open?
Well, you can't say saloon without those doors.
It's not a saloon if it doesn't have those doors.
Correct.
Okay.
I have always said this.
Since the beginning of time,
Since I was a
said
child,
this about saloons.
Someone's like, this is a saloon. And I was like, where's the doors? And then I just walk away as a 10-year-old. Even at steakhouses. And they're like, this is the ribeye saloon. I'm like, no, it isn't.
I am deceased.
Those are glass doors. Anyway, so over the years, Abe and Sol expanded into real estate and other businesses like coal and tubing. Tubing, not as like tubing down a river, like tubes.
Got it.
So around the same time, the Hippodrome Theater opened on 3rd Avenue, which would later become the State Theater. And the Hyman brothers eventually bought it.
Oh, okay.
Along with the Orpheum Theater. So in 1910, they also purchased an old skating rink on 4th Avenue and converted that into the Lyric Theater.
So they're just a conglomeration over here.
In Huntington, West Virginia. I find it really interesting at this time because there was a lot happening with theater in this area at the time. And I think it's mostly to do with the Ohio River running through and trade and ships going through, because
that makes sense.
The town that I'm from, Parkersburg, during the vaudeville era, had so many theaters because of all of that traffic on the river.
Interesting.
So you had, like, I worked at the Smoot Theater for a summer, which the Smoot is a gorgeous old vaudeville theater. And like the Munchkins, which is the wrong term to use now, from The Wizard of Oz, did a show there. And there's an old picture of them on the wall in that theater. So I did a whole bunch of research around all the theaters in Parkersburg that used to be there. So it doesn't surprise me that at this time in this sort of area, and of course you're down there near the capital of West Virginia, like this is a more booming.
Makes sense. How big was Huntington at the time?
Oh,
like population wise? Do you know?
I'm not sure actually. I mean, right now it's about 360,000.
Oh, okay.
But
it's not huge.
It's not huge. It's the 3rd largest city in West Virginia.
Oh, all right.
Excuse me, the 2nd largest city in West Virginia.
Oh.
Charleston, Huntington, Morgantown, Parkersburg.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It was founded in 1871, so it might not have been that big because it's not too long after it was actually founded.
Yeah.
But it seems like it was bustling and building up.
Yeah, because that many theaters.
I know. They're just popping up. And the Hyman brothers are like, there's a theater. There's a theater.
Because you got to have audience for them. So surely there's
demand for it
at
the time. Yeah. So it's a booming. So the Lyric Theater, which they built over the ice skating rink, was so successful that they later expanded and opened the Dixie Theater across from it.
Damn, these guys are just popping off.
Yeah, they're getting it. So in 1928, they built the Keith-Albee Theatre, which became one of the largest motion picture theaters outside of New York City.
Oh, wow.
With Abe Hyman serving as president.
So this was a movie theater, not a stage.
Correct.
Gotcha.
So at the grand opening of the Keith-Albee, Abe Hyman said, "We have realized our ambition to give Huntington something she is entitled to." His brother Sol added, "We wish the people of Huntington to feel that this is their theater, built for them."
Yeah.
It was a motion picture house, but I think they also had in mind vaudeville acts.
Okay.
So at that time, you still have like a full stage, but also a screen that can be flown in. Like at the Smoot Theater, that's a vaudeville theater. That has a full stage, but also a movie screen.
Gotcha.
Later in 1947, the brothers built the Tipton Theater, but it was destroyed by fire in 1950.
Ooh.
Over time, their company, the Greater Huntington Theater Corporation, came to own most of the theaters in the region, including drive-ins in nearby towns.
I mean, it sounds like it.
It was like a conglomerate. They were grabbing up all the theaters. So let's talk about the name of the theater, Keith-Albee.
Okay.
This wasn't the only theater with this name in the United States.
Well, who is this Keith-Albee?
Oh, it's two people.
Oh.
So it was a circuit of vaudeville theaters.
Okay.
Benjamin Franklin Keith and Edwin Franklin Albee were pioneers of vaudeville.
Gotcha.
The type of variety show that became the heart of American entertainment in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. So Keith was born in 1846 in New Hampshire to a very strict religious household.
Ooh.
And he worked several jobs before landing in the entertainment world with P.T. Barnum's circus. So in the 1870s, Keith worked at George B. Bunnell's Dime Museum in New York. So a dime museum is essentially like a little circus. Like you would pay a dime to go in and look at all of the weird things.
Sure.
Think of like what's that? Like a freak show.
Sure. Like sideshow kind
a
of
sideshow
thing.
type situation.
So
freak show is not a great term anymore, but something like that.
When I was a little kid, it was like this contest that you entered where you had to read a children's book, and then if you did it, you got tickets to the circus.
Oh my God.
This is before I knew how like horrible circuses were,
Yes.
but I was too shy to read, and I got up there because it was like all on camera and stuff,
Oh my God.
like in front of all these people. It was a big deal. You had to like do this performance essentially to get the tickets.
Yeah.
And I don't remember actually getting through the read because I was so terrified, but I did go to the circus. So I guess they felt bad for me.
You got up there and froze, and they're like, just send her to the circus.
Just take her to the circus. And I remember going and getting cotton candy and like seeing the like trapeze artist. And for me at that time was a magical time.
I can imagine.
Of course, now I realize like how horrible it was and all the mistreatment, but I didn't know that then. I was blissfully unaware.
I don't think I've actually ever been to a like full-on circus. I mean, I've seen things in Vegas, but that's not comparable really, right?
Like a Cirque show?
I've seen a Cirque show, but like...
I mean, it's different.
Yeah.
But a lot of the same elements.
Okay, gotcha. Well, thank you.
You're welcome. I guess.
So Keith soon opens his own New York Dime Museum in Boston, where he experimented with different types of shows. His big success came when he started adding vaudeville acts, which became a big hit at the time. And Keith's idea was to have continuous shows, allowing for a constant turnover of audiences, and this innovation helped him to make a fortune.
Ooh.
So he's like seeing the little, side vaudeville projects and little things going on, and he's like, no, this is what's next.
He's got some forethought. And
he does.
Like,
and so he turns it into a huge business
Good
opportunity.
for him.
So Keith was soon joined by Edwin F. Albee, who had also worked in circuses and entertainment. Albee was born in 1857 in Maine and met Keith in Boston after working with Barnum Circus.
Okay.
So we have a lot of circus starters here. Albee suggested improving Keith's shows by adding higher class acts, which led to a more refined and sort of respectable version of vaudeville.
Okay.
I think there was a little raunch, there's a little comedy in there at the time. The two men worked closely together. Keith would focus on the theatrical side, Albee handled all the business stuff.
Okay.
So by the early 1900s, Keith and Albee had created this vaudeville empire, with the United Booking Office, UBO, controlling most of the theaters on the East Coast.
Okay.
So they were building this vaudeville empire. Also, they were working with this company who would manage the theaters that they had their shows in. This allowed them to dictate terms for performances and have a monopoly over the vaudeville industry. They opened lavish theaters designed to create a complete entertainment experience for the audience. Keith dies in 1914.
Okay.
And Albee takes over the Keith-Albee circuit, which had expanded to include about 1,500 theaters.
Dang.
It's a ton. Albee merged the Keith-Albee circuit with the Orpheum circuit in the 1920s, forming the Keith-Albee Orpheum circuit.
That's a lot to say.
Figure, right? However, the rise of the movie industry is what eventually overwhelms vaudeville.
Yeah.
And in 1928, the circuit sold its stock to Joseph P. Kennedy's RCA, forming the Radio Keith Orpheum.
RKO.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Movies became the main attraction at the theaters, with vaudeville acts relegated to sort of a supporting role. So we see that with the opening of the Keith-Albee in Huntington, because we have these vaudeville acts, Ray, the Blue Lightning Star.
But they're not the main
They're not the main
event.
attraction. It's the movie.
Yeah.
So this is where we see that sort of
tide turn.
Thank you. I was just turning my fingers over and going. So Albee continued to run the company until he died in 1930, marking the end of an era for vaudeville.
Yes.
The Keith-Albee Theatre was built at a cost of $2 million and took 14 months to complete, which really isn't that long to me.
Yeah, I guess not.
It was designed by renowned Scottish-born American architect Thomas Lamb, who was known for designing over 100 vaudeville picture houses.
Oh.
The theater boasted a red and gold color scheme, stained glass lighting, and a mix of Moorish and Spanish design elements. All of which are still part of that today.
Yeah, that picture I saw on their website.
Gorgeous.
Beautiful.
I want to give a shout out to that website because they've done a fabulous job of capturing the history of this venue. And a lot of what I'm telling you here is from this amazing brochure that they wrote.
Gotcha.
It's like 40 pages, all about the history of all of
Nice.
this. So they are really well versed in not only the Keith-Albee Theater, but theater at the time in this area.
And it sounds like they're trying to preserve that history, which is great.
Exactly. And I'll talk a little bit more about what's going on recently toward the end of this.
Okay.
So the building is the only atmospheric theater designed by Thomas Lamb still in operation.
Oh,
atmospheric
wow.
is the word I was talking about earlier. Only 8 of Lamb's designs were atmospheric, which is a rare and expensive style. So atmospheric theaters, you may ask.
I will. What are they?
Well, atmospheric theaters are designed to make the audience feel as if they're sitting outdoors in a grand courtyard.
Got it.
At the Keith-Albee, the auditorium is surrounded by faux village buildings, and the ceiling above mimics an open sky full of the twinkling stars and the drifting clouds.
Yes, it's the same at the Louisville Palace. And if I remember the Louisville Palace correctly, because it's been years since I've been there, but they also have the ceiling that looks like a sky.
Yeah.
It was opened in 1928 as well. And the inside teleports you to an ornate Spanish courtyard.
Spanish Baroque, same type of situation. I think that a lot of people were using this style at the time.
Yeah.
Because we have, again, like Aragon Ballroom and I guess Music Box, you're more like you're looking at a castle. But I guess that's the thing. It's meant like you're in a courtyard.
Music Box, when I first went there, reminded me of the Louisville Palace.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Same style. Very cool. I do like it. So the lavish decor includes intricate plasterwork, chandeliers, elegant balconies. Even the restrooms are upscale.
So fancy.
The Keith-Albee is a perfect example of the opulence of the 1920s.
The roaring
20s. The build of this theater was intense. Construction involved 2 million bricks, 550 tons of steel, and vast amounts of cement and plaster. The main auditorium is huge, as you can see, with room for 3,000 seats.
Damn, that's a lot of people.
A lot of people and pretty great acoustics for the time. The stage was fully equipped and there were trap doors.
Oh.
Allowing performers, animals, and equipment to appear and disappear.
So high tech.
Needed. I only went under a stage like one time, and that was when I was maybe going to work in New York at the Foxwoods where Spider-Man was playing. And the guy gave me a whole tour of the whole venue. Gorgeous. But I got to go under the stage and see where all the big set pieces came up.
That's fun.
Super cool.
I love that kind of stuff.
So the projection room at the Keith-Albee was one of the first to use commercial machines from the Peerless manufacturing, capable of showing both silent and sound films.
Okay.
And over the years, the Keith-Albee has undergone updates to its projection and sound systems, but remains a great example of the transition from vaudeville to film.
Yeah.
The talkies.
The talkies.
The theater's ticket booth is made of Verdi antique marble with bronze grills and 2 vintage lanterns for decoration.
It just sounds so fancy and
fancy
expensive.
Yes. Inside, the main lobby features luxurious floor of rubber matting with stripes.
What? Rubber matting?
Yeah. But it's beautiful. But it's beautiful rubber matting, Kate.
With that stripes, luxurious rubber matting.
With stripes of white Italian marble in it.
Real Italian marble?
Yeah.
With the rubber mat? I guess I'm just not picturing
I'm not up to date on that either.
Okay.
On either side of the lobby, you'll find an advanced ticket booth on the left and a large ornamental mirror on the right. Amber-colored chandeliers add to the elegant atmosphere.
So Kevin just looked up at my ceiling as though a chandelier was going to appear, and sadly, it did not.
Could you imagine us sitting here? I'm wearing a tuxedo and half of a phantom mask, and you're dressed as Christine Daae. And then as I'm telling my story, a little chandelier comes down and hits me in the face.
Yes.
And that would be my vaudeville act. So the theater's floors are covered in about 20,000 yards of rich gray stone Wilton carpet with a dark red background. The grand foyer is huge, 85 feet wide and 25 feet deep.
Big. Huge.
There's a 35-foot high ceiling. The building includes large mirrors set into ornamental plaster and adobe finished walls, 2 wide staircases made of Botticino marble or Botticino, I don't know, wrought with iron railings. Those lead up to a mezzanine. The mezzanine itself is a 110-foot long promenade with the Spanish mission-style furniture, balconies, drinking fountains, marble, gorgeous.
To sum up, it purty.
From the balcony, you get a fantastic view of the entire theater. The dome above it is painted that Mediterranean blue because we're meant to be outside, all of that. So in June 1997, we're going to jump forward a little bit, just a little bit.
Just a few decades.
Just a few. It's no big. The Keith-Albee upgraded its sound system with digital theater stereo, DTS, which dramatically improved how voices and sound effects were heard, cutting down on all the background noise. And then in August 2020, the theater got even more upgrades, including a new projector and surround sound system, thanks in part to a generous anonymous donation to the Martial Artists series.
It's interesting that it occurred in August of 2020 because we weren't really sure what was going to happen with theaters at that time.
100%. Additional funding for the project came from the National Endowment for the Humanities and the West Virginia Humanities Council, using money from the Federal CARES Act during the COVID-19
there it is. Okay.
So they were able to do that because of the money from the COVID pandemic. So in the early days of the Keith-Albee Theater, audiences were treated to the top-of-the-line sounds of that Wurlitzer theater organ. And that organ had 3 keyboards and 13 ranks of pipes, plus percussion and sound effects that were perfect for silent films.
Oh, cool.
Unfortunately, the organ was sold off in the 1950s, but thanks to Dr. Robert Edmonds and the Huntington Theater Organ Project, the original Wurlitzer was tracked down, purchased, and brought back to the Keith-Albee in 2009.
Oh, nice.
It has been installed in several places over the years, including Muscatine, Iowa, Charleston, West Virginia, and Greensboro, North Carolina.
So it didn't stay at the Keith-Albee Theater?
No, but before it made its way back.
Oh, okay.
Those were the places
Gotcha.
it had gone to. Now the organ has even more musical features, like an English post horn and a brass saxophone. It's one of the only 2 Wurlitzers originally built for theaters in West Virginia that have been returned to their home theaters. The other is in Granada Theater in Bluefield, West Virginia. So back in the 1920s, the Keith-Albee was ahead of its time in more ways than one. Air conditioning, not a thing.
Yeah.
Not a thing at the time. Not common at the time, I should say.
Yeah.
But the theater boasted a sophisticated 7-unit ventilation system with fans to keep air moving, which kept things cool
nice.
And the temperature temperate.
Yeah.
So by the 1960s, the rise of the multiplex cinema led to changes in theater design, and the Keith-Albee was no exception here. In the mid-70s, the lower section of the theater was split into 3 smaller theaters, though these changes were made in a way that could later be undone. It was not permanent.
Okay.
In 2006, the Keith-Albee stopped showing regular movies. So from the mid-70s to 2006, it was a movie theater, specifically a multiplex cinema.
Yeah.
Movies. Popcorn, a good time. But in 2006, the Keith-Albee stopped showing regular movies and continued hosting live performances and special events. That same year, the Greater Huntington Theater Corporation donated the theater to the Marshall University Foundation, and it was later transferred to the newly formed Keith-Albee Performing Arts Center, Inc., which is a nonprofit that now runs that space.
Okay.
So I text my friend Brittany, because Brittany went to Marshall.
Oh, yeah.
She's on our Patreon. And I was like, did you ever go here? And she was like, all the fucking time.
Oh, wow.
And she's like, it's a gorgeous theater. It's amazing. It's owned by that nonprofit, but I just talked about it. The Martial Arts series operates its shows out of there. So it's definitely it's still a touring theater, but also is used by the college.
Okay.
So the nonprofit KPAC, the Keith-Albee Performing Arts Center Incorporated, wasted no time in starting renovations to restore the theater, including bringing the front lobby and auditorium back to their original look for the premiere of the movie We Are Marshall.
Okay.
They also worked on major repairs. They fixed the roof, added an ADA restroom, restored the vertical sign. However, the vertical sign in 2011 was damaged in a windstorm and had to be taken down after 80 years.
80 years?
Yeah, the community rallied together for Save Our Sign campaign with a concert at the theater raising funds for the restoration. So it did go back.
Okay.
Artistic history a little bit. Remember that Keith-Albee opened in May 1928, just over a year before the Great Depression. Mm-hmm. So despite the rough times, people still packed the theater, especially for big films like Reckless, starring Jean Harlow and William Powell. So in the 30s, the Depression did hurt attendance, and of course, vaudeville is dying.
Yeah.
By 1940, vaudeville was mostly gone, and then you have the rise of radio and TV, which is further contributing to the decline of live theater.
Sure.
So the Keith-Albee suffered a significant damage during the historic flood of 1937, but they quickly restored it. And in 1936, the Martial Artists Series was founded, which is at the university.
Okay.
And in 1939, it made Keith-Albee its home, bringing a wide range of performances from Broadway shows to orchestras to comedians. It became a place for live entertainment again. I just found all of this very fascinating. There was a fire in 2001.
Ooh.
It caused smoke damage.
I would imagine.
They were on it. They're like cleaned up, opened again. The Keith-Albee has also had the honor of hosting major film premieres, a rare feat for a theater outside of large cities.
Yeah. You don't really think about West Virginia as like the place to go.
Well, you'd think that. But Steven Soderbergh shot a movie in Parkersburg using local people.
That makes sense.
Oh my God, what was it called? I'm going to shit myself. Can I look it up real quick?
Yeah, and please don't shit yourself while you're sitting in my chair.
I would never do that. Bubble.
I loved Bubble.
Did you see that?
Yes. If it's what I'm thinking of.
It was like let me find it.
Never mind. I already know it's not what I'm thinking of.
I'm
thinking of the AbFab character Bubble. Jane Horrocks, who played Bubble in AbFab, did a movie called Little Voice, and I loved Little Voice.
100%.
Yikes. I was so excited, too. I was like, I loved Bubble.
Bubble is amazing.
Jane Horrocks is amazing.
He did this series of films where he went to small towns and cast local people to be in a movie.
Okay.
And made it. And there was a movie called Bubble. He directed it. It premiered at the Smoot Theater.
Nice.
I went to see it. It was great. It was also very cool locally to be around when that was happening.
Yeah,
because people were super interested in it. So fabulous. At the Keith-Albee, we have other stories.
Ooh.
And they hosted on June 25th, 1969, The Bridge at Remagen premiered there before being shown to the rest of the world.
I'm not familiar with that. What's that?
The film is based on a book by Ken Heckler, who is a West Virginia congressman who had been involved in the 1945 mission to capture the Remagen Bridge in Germany during World War II.
Okay.
Yeah. I looked up that whole conflict about the bridge. Sure. Interesting part of history.
Okay.
Didn't fully understand it.
Okay.
Might need to go watch the movie.
All right.
In 1988, Rain Man
Oh.
Also had a special pre-premiere screening at the Keith-Albee with stars Dustin Hoffman and Tom Cruise attending.
All right.
To support the Autism Services Center in Huntington, West Virginia.
Oh, cool.
Perhaps the most significant film for the theater was We Are Marshall in 2006, which tells the story of the 1970 plane crash that killed nearly the entire Marshall University football team.
So awful.
Much of the film was shot in Huntington, and scenes were filmed at the Keith-Albee itself.
Okay.
So this brings us to one of our favorite topics here at Horrorwood.
Ghosties?
Is the theater haunted, Kate?
Yes.
You betcha, is what I wrote in my notes.
I love how after several of your comments throughout episodes, you'll say, is what I wrote in my notes.
What I wrote in my notes. So the theater is said to be one of the most haunted places in the area, with several spooky stories tied to it.
Tell me some of them.
A few of the hauntings seem to come from places where people have actually perished.
Ooh.
For example, in the basement, 2 electricians were electrocuted.
Oh, shit.
And the projection room is rumored to be haunted by a maintenance worker who may have died from a heart attack.
Oh, that's awful.
There's even an unverified tale about a homeless man who allegedly froze to death under the stage one winter.
Oh, that is really sad.
Yeah. These areas are considered hot spots for the paranormal activity where these things happened, with reports of strange movement, shadows in the projection room, and just all around feeling of unease. But the most famous ghost at the Keith-Albee is not tied to any known deaths.
Okay.
And she's known as the Lady in Red.
I knew it was a lady in something. It's always either a lady in white,
lady
lady in
red,
gray,
lady in black.
So tell me about the lady in red.
I'm going to write my own ghost story called The Lady in Seafoam Green.
I would read that.
Thank you. Lady in Red. So she's dressed in a glamorous red 1940s dress and high heels. She's usually spotted in the ladies' room on the mezzanine level near a mirrored parlor. People have even seen her walking around the main stage late at night after the crowds have gone.
Was she a performer?
Nobody knows who it is. They can't tie it back to any actual death that occurred there.
Yeah.
But based on what she's wearing and walking around the stage, maybe she was a performer at the time.
Interesting.
Or an audience member who's haunting her favorite place.
Could be. What place would you haunt?
Ooh. A Denny's.
Denny's?
Maybe a Shoney's.
Oh, I remember Shoney's. I used to go there all the time as a kid.
The men's bathroom at a truck stop.
Well, moving on.
I'm just kidding.
He's not kidding.
No. So the basement also has its own creepy vibes, as any fucking basement does.
Yes, right there in the description of basements.
But in the basement, people hear mysterious noises, voices, footsteps. Some say they've even seen a ghostly man wandering down there, possibly one of those electricians who died.
Ooh.
There are different versions of the electrician's story, but in one of them, they were working on electrical wiring in the basement and thought they had cut off power to the basement.
Ooh.
Unfortunately, they touched a live wire
Yikes.
and were electrocuted, and their spirits are believed to linger.
I feel like if I were to pass and I was going to haunt a place, I don't want it to be my workplace.
Yeah, boo. No, I would hate that.
That sounds awful. Like, I want to haunt the Smoky Mountains or In-N-Out.
Yum.
Or
A Taco Bell?
nah, maybe not so much a Taco Bell.
Wait, what's the Taco Bell slogan?
Live Moss.
Live Moss.
Because I can't.
Anywho, in addition to the Lady in Red, there's also an invisible presence that's felt in the basement, particularly around the stairs that lead to the ladies' restroom. Visitors often feel like they're being followed, but no one has actually seen the ghost. It's just that feeling.
Sure.
I saw some comments on blogs around these ghost stories, and people have said they feel uneasy in this area. I just want to quote these things. One reads, "As a little girl, my mother used to take me here. She told me I used to tell her someone was in the bathroom with us, but she never saw anyone, although she felt like we were being watched."
Ooh, that's creepy.
Yeah.
Of all the places I want to be watched, the bathroom is not it.
Another of these reads, "When I was a little girl and I went to the Keith-Albee, my mother would send me down to the restroom alone. I was always so spooked that I ran out of there."
What was going on in that bathroom?
I don't know. Most of my experiences, have been like that. Like, I remember when I worked...
I thought you were going to talk about your experiences in bathrooms. And I was like, Kevin, we don't need
Whenever
to know.
I go into a restroom, I am so scared. I have to run right out of there.
Unless I see a good-looking man.
Unless I'm at the
At that truck
bathroom
stop.
at the Lion's Den.
There we go.
There was a Facebook post from the theater itself a couple of years ago around Halloween, which recounted the ghosts and the tales. And I found some really great comments from them that I want to read here.
Okay.
Andrew RR says, quote, "Only one time did I notice something off or different at the Keith-Albee. This was about 15 years ago, but I was in the basement and I was there as paid help for a job, setting up and unpacking for a play production. And I heard as clear as day the sounds of a young woman crying and whimpering."
Oh.
Christina Hart said, quote, "When I was in middle school, we were on a class trip to see a movie. Mm-hmm. And when I went to the bathroom, I noticed there's a room next to it on the right that had mirrors. I walked in there and there was a woman in a red dress standing in the mirror. When I got close to her, she vanished. Oof. And I've never been back since."
Weird.
There is also a long-standing rumor. Wait, before I get into this last rumor, I also want to say that somebody posted a picture of them posing in front of the theater. Uh-huh. And up on the top left, you can see something peering out of a curtain. It is not a person.
Ew.
Yeah.
It's
not a person. I'll show it to you. Maybe we can post it. I don't know, but I'll show it to you.
Okay.
So there's also this long-standing rumor about mysterious tunnels underneath Huntington, especially ones that supposedly connected the Ohio River to downtown.
Okay.
The story goes that these tunnels were used by vaudeville performers to move their props, baggage, and even animals from riverboats into the theaters. Mm. But the rumor gets even juicier with the talk of bootlegging, secret courier services, and even mafia members using them as a hidden escape route.
That would track.
It tracks. Depression. Prohibition. It's said that underworld figures could hide out in private clubs or hotels and slip away through these passages.
I mean, yeah.
Derek Hyman, who is president of the Greater Huntington Theater Corporation, has heard a similar rumor that there was a tunnel connecting the Keith-Albee Theatre to the nearby Frederick Hotel to shuttle guest performers back and forth. Mm-hmm. However, Hyman says this is just a rumor. There is no tunnel connecting the two. He confirms that there are indeed some tunnels beneath the Keith-Albee, but they're strictly for maintenance or delivery purposes.
Well, now they are.
Well, now they are, right, honey? So ending at the curb outside. I almost said club.
In the club.
They were going to the club. He's even checked out both sides of the walls at the ends of these tunnels and found no sign of any hidden underground passages.
All right.
William Ritter, a local who passed away, had also heard the rumor about the tunnels connecting to the hotel, but he didn't think it was true. Huntington architect Keith Dean, who's now deceased, confirmed that while there are tunnels underneath sidewalks in the city, they typically just end at the curb.
Okay.
There's no tunnels that we know of, that they know of.
Okay.
So who knows?
Not them.
And that's the story of the Keith-Albee Theatre in Huntington, West Virginia. They are closed right now because they're currently under renovation, from what I read. But you can visit them online at keithalbee.com, and they have a capital campaign running. Donate if you feel so inclined. And that's my story.
All right. I'm interested if any of our listeners have ever been there, or even more if they've had a spooky experience there. Let us know in the comments on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, or Spotify at
Horrorwood Podcast.
Or you can shoot us an email at
horrorwoodpodcast@gmail.com.
Or you can be like Heather Church and pop on over to Patreon at
patreon.com/horrorwoodpodcast. I almost said it /Heather Church, and then I was like, don't do that. Horrorwood Podcast.
Or you can pop over to the Patreon app. We never mentioned the app, but there is a Patreon app.
There is a Patreon app. I do have that on my phone, yes.
And also, I want to know where you would haunt when you leave this earth.
You know, I know we always ask for spooky stories, but we're going to flip it on its head and say, if you have any creative ideas as to what you would do as a ghost or where you would go, I want to hear that too.
Yeah. Let us know.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.